Hi everyone, I'm here to talk to you today about the American Revolutionary Era. So there is not necessarily a authoritatively defined period when the Revolutionary Era begins. Obviously there is for the war, but for the Revolutionary Era, maybe we'll start in the 1740s in Boston. It was a port city that had quite a bit of ethnic and racial diversity. There were people working on the docks. And one of the things that they knew how to really do well was to resist this thing called impressment. So the British Navy would come and try to force people into military service, into naval service. And so there was a lot of resistance to that. So this is well before any real true thoughts of independence were coming, but there was that sort of resistance to British colonial rule, at least back until that era. And Samuel Adams, a key figure in kind of the early parts of the revolutionary ideas, so like in the 1750s, 60s, and the 70s, Samuel Adams kind of started to change a lot of the rhetoric from the rights of Englishmen to the natural rights of man. And that was quite a rhetorical shift for people to kind of start embracing and maybe in their minds kind of moving away from British authority. So a key event though would be the 7 Years' War in the 1750s and 1760s, which kind of boils down to it was the British and their Native American allies versus the French and their Native American allies. And the British won this war and really established their dominance in North America, although the Spanish were still in the very southern parts, like Florida. But really established their dominance in North America. The problem, though, for the British was when you remove this kind of common enemy for everybody, which in the form of the French, there is often then kind of a dissension amongst the people that kind of starts to boil over. And also the British had to levy taxes to pay for the debt of that war. So that's when they started to tax the colonists quite more heavily. So in 1765, for example, the Stamp Act was passed by Parliament. And a lot of the colonists, and you've probably heard of the phrase, no taxation without representation. A lot of the colonists believed that their local legislators should be making these types of taxes not far off in the British Parliament. So there was quite a bit of resistance to this. And here, you see that some of the elite people were resisting this, but there was also a lot of resistance among the poor. And in Boston, for instance, there was a lot of mobs against the stamp tax collectors, the people that collected the taxes on the Stamp Act. And so, for instance, one of the stamp tax collectors, they burned him in effigy, which essentially means you create a likeness of him and then burn him, not the person literally. They also went to his home and ransacked his home. They then destroyed the house of the Lieutenant Governor, Thomas Hutchinson. So there was this sort of kind of mob mentality that some people in Boston were kind of in favor of, but some of the elites, for instance, a John Adams, he always was kind of uncomfortable with this, even though he eventually becomes one of the leaders and founding fathers. So there is that distinction there.